Transamorous Network.
So where were we?
We were talking about stories and how you can make it happen if you're in a bad place or in one of those parts of the country that seems to be repealing all of your laws and all of your rights. There are other states that are fighting for your rights and fighting for you to have a place. So find a way, change that story.
Yep.
And just like we have all these horrible things happening in America, there's other countries which are standing up in opposition to it and changing their laws to support their LMNOP communities and their abortion rights and all of these really wonderful things. And I find it funny, personally.
Mm-hmm.
It almost feels like they're doing it in spite of America.
Yeah, I can see that. Although,
like, okay, they think they're so wonderful and they're so special and they're doing this fucked up stuff.
Yes,
watch this.
Exactly.
We're going to be better than you.
Exactly. But it's interesting because the one we're about to talk about, the president, I think it's the president.
It's the president.
The president is, he's a bigot.
Yeah. So we're talking about Brazil. Brazil just passed the Supreme Court, 6 out of 11, but the other 5 haven't quite voted yet. But
Correct.
It doesn't matter because the majority has already won.
Yep.
Has made transphobic and homophobia illegal.
That's
under
right.
the law, under the same laws as racism.
That's correct.
And punishable up to 5 years in prison.
Very good. And it's interesting because the
right-wing conservative president,
President Jair Bolsonaro said that he would rather his son die than come out gay.
Yeah.
Wow.
He said he'd rather have his son die in an accident than to bring a bloke home with a mustache.
You got a good memory.
I do have a good memory when the time serves.
Exactly. It's so interesting. But it's so interesting. You know, as you probably are aware, Brazil has had some of the highest murder rates for transgender and gay people.
141 LGBT murders in 2019.
And then 400.
Over 400 last year
last
alone.
Year, yeah. And so
that's insane.
It is
just
insane
to think about.
So something really needed to be done down there.
Yeah.
And I think there's a very large population of LGBT people in Brazil too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in a sense, the number of people being killed is proportional to the number of people who are eligible to be killed, so to speak. And so it's a sad thing that you have a president. I mean, in a lot of ways, he's a lot like Trump.
Yeah, he sounds very
similar.
Very similar in his beliefs and that they align.
Yes, and more of these type of right-wing leaders are taking seats in governments across the world. This is not something that's just happening in the United States, and
They're
so
stealing seats across the world.
Exactly.
But anyway,
and so here we have the same thing going on in Brazil that we have here in the United States, where we have the federal level is trying to preserve Christian values, while actually the legislature.
Well, I don't know.
Yes.
The people at the top have really fucked up views.
Yes.
But the people under them are like, we don't have the same views.
Yes.
I mean, you have the Supreme Court in Brazil saying, no, it's not okay.
That's right.
Homophobia and transphobia are as bad as racism.
Right.
In a culture full of color
It's
and
gotta
diversity.
Be one of the most diverse countries in the world.
Absolutely. I think there was more black people sent to Brazil in the slave trade than the entire Americas.
Yeah. So it's interesting what you just said, Remy, because I agree. I think that the general population, just like in the United States, the majority of the general population supports progressive ideals, but the wealthy proportion of not the majority of wealthy people, but some wealthy people in both the United States and probably in Brazil also are highly conservative. And so you have leaders who are wanting to win jobs, basically, elections, win seats in powerful places. And so they come out with these very conservative positions like Trump and like President Bolsonaro, because those positions will curry them favors and get them in those and get them to keep the seats. It's the same thing that's going on in Israel right now. This isn't anti-Semitic. It's the same thing going on in Israel with Prime Minister
The Prime Minister.
Yeah, the Prime Minister of Israel. Netanyahu. Netanyahu is an extreme conservative, And he has used the war between Israel and Palestine as a whipping post for winning elections. And he's been in power as prime minister for, I think, over decades now. And so it's like, and he's like Trump. I mean, this wave of conservative nationalism is sweeping the world. Meanwhile, I think the majority of many populations of nations, not all of them, but many are favorable of progressive ideals. And so it's just interesting. Here's a little sub-interesting thing. I keep elevating our conversation to these macro topics out of the LMNOP community, but they kind of mirror each other.
Well, I mean, Brunei, the emperor or the Sultan of Brunei implements this anti-homosexual law, and then his son comes out gay, and so he decides not to actually enforce the law.
Really?
Yeah! Ain't that about something? I think it's hilarious, but that's
great.
what you get.
That's exactly right.
That's what you get.
So yeah, it's incredible. And so Brazil is sticking their finger in our eye. Actually, not all of our eyes, just the conservative state eyes. And so, and that's not the only good news in the world, right? We've got this other lady out of the UK.
Yeah, just another piece of positive news. We've got this wonderful woman in
her last name is funny.
Eccleston? No.
Springay.
Jill Springay.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It is funny.
She has started a consulting, an image consulting business to help trans women, especially in the early parts of their transition, from men to women, you know, and to give them image consulting, makeup techniques. She looks at their body shape and helps them dress in a way that'll feminize their appearance. She helps them find wigs that complement their facial shape and skin tone. And she's nominated for positive role model category in the National Diversity Awards of 2019. Yeah. That's awesome.
It's awesome.
That's awesome.
And,
you know, she's a cisgender woman
Yep.
who was made redundant in her government job and she'd always loved doing hair and makeup.
Yep.
I get you, girl. It's a wonderful thing. And so she wanted to start this consultant business, this image consulting business, when a friend of hers, a man, came over and says, "Can you do my makeup and make me look like a lady?"
Yes.
And that's when she realized that there's no help
Yeah.
for that. There's, and that she could do that. And so she changed the focus of her business and now is almost solely helping
people transition.
Or people help in their early transition. And I think that's awesome.
I think it's awesome too. And she said,
we applaud you, girl.
Totally. And she says in the article how stunned she was, how easily you can make a presenting male look like a woman with the right application of makeup.
With the right application of makeup, the right, again, dress for your body shape, dress for your,
Yep. So it's pretty awesome. She's wonderful. So at the Transamorous Network, I'm losing my voice. Can you hear it?
I do.
Yeah. At the Transamorous Network, I don't know why I'm yelling because the mic is right there. At the
We're excited.
We are excited.
We're glad to be
glad
back.
To be back. This is episode 3. The Transamorous Network, we strive to offer you an alternative story to the one that beats you over the head every day if you're watching the news, paying attention to social media, listening to your friends who are negative Nellies, if you have those, or otherwise feeling bad yourself because of your situation. So we want to offer you news around the world and in our country that shows you that it's not all that bad, that there are a lot of great things going on, and that if you shift your perspective, if you change the stories that you're telling yourself about the world and about your world and your life will shape itself around those new stories, just like your world and your life has shaped itself around the stories you're currently telling.
Right. It's, again, all about perspective. And as much as HUD is being repealed and healthcare is being repealed, there are groups of people that are rallying together to stand up to say that this is not okay. They're coming together and finding ways to help those that are now being targeted, and so there's a positive flip side to it all. We've talked about that ever since Trump got into office, is that as fucked up as he is, he's done some amazing things in helping us come together
Come
as
together.
people.
He has.
Again, we're different people. We're all different, but we're all equal, and we need to stand up together, arm in arm, black and white, Latin and Asian, trans and straight, cis, whatever, gay, LMNOP, it doesn't fucking matter. We are equal human beings, and we need to support each other in all ways. It's the only way that we will all have the rights we need, have the support we need, have the services we need, and have lives full of joy.
Yes. Yes. And your life can be full of joy if you let it happen that way. And so we're just transitioning to the end here. So these episodes, when Remy and I are in front of the camera, instead of Remy and a guest being in front of the camera, are the episodes in which we dive a little deeper in the material that we talk about on our blog and on Facebook and other places, our social media particularly. And so coming off of what Remy just said about the diversity of peoples and how we need to come together to support one another, let's look at the diversity of stories that you're telling yourselves in your own personal lives, and how that diversity of stories that you're telling, which way does that diversity of stories lean? Does it lean more negative or does it lean more positive? And whichever direction is leaning, it can always get better. You can always tell, even if you're leaning positively, you can always tell even more positive stories.
Right.
And as a result of that, have it get even better. And so I want to share something personal from my life to illustrate that. Over the last 6 months, my wife and I have been, this has been a long time coming actually, because probably 4 years ago or so, I was not arguing with my wife or against my wife, but arguing for my wife and I having an open relationship. And at the time, I was wanting an open relationship because I was considering being active in finding a transgender partner. Now, I know some of you, and one particular trans-attracted male is going to have a knee-jerk reaction to what I just said, and you're going to say, you shouldn't be trying to find another partner when you're married. But here's the thing about that. In the same way that there's diversity of peoples, there's also diversities of marriages. There's all kinds of marriages out there, you guys. And
Yes,
you can't be
there
sitting there
are.
judging my marriage just because it's not the kind of marriage that you would have for yourself. So anyway, I was arguing for an open marriage with my wife several years ago. And at the time, she just wasn't ready for that kind of situation. Just wasn't ready. Let's just keep it like that. And so I let it go. But I knew that by telling the story, by having the conversation, it opened a door that otherwise was not open. And so here we are, probably 3.5, maybe 4 years later, we're actually in an open relationship. I actually wrote a blog about this on the Transamorous Network blog. We're now in an open relationship, and actually it's not. It's in the Positively Focused blog. I'll transfer it over to the Transamorous Network blog so you can read it. But we're in an open relationship now, and she's seeing another guy. And it's interesting because when she first started, I felt a lot of resentment. Because
And it was your idea.
It was my idea, and by the time it happened,
we're not perfect.
Yeah, by the time it happened, I was no longer wanting to be active in that way because I had other priorities and was focusing on those priorities. And so I had resentment because had she been ready when I wanted to, I would have been able to. But now that she's ready, I'm not really interested in it. So my life has changed, whereas hers has changed too, to be where I was. And so in the first couple of months of this situation, it was really intense. And I was having a really hard time with it. And but the hard time I was having was all internalized because even though I'm not perfect at it, I'm pretty good at this stuff. And so I wasn't making my partner wrong to her face about it. I was making her wrong within me about it. My stories about her were making her wrong, but I wasn't sharing those stories with her. And so I had a lot of work to do around changing my stories about this circumstance, because the more I held on to that negativity, the worse the experience got for me. Not for her. She was having fun. Getting all that dick.
Wow.
But I wasn't. But I was suffering. I was suffering because of the stories I was telling. So then, over a period of time. It wasn't as easy as it's going to sound like coming out of my mouth. Then I decided to change my stories about it. I was doing affirmations, I was doing some journaling, I was doing a lot of meditation, and out of that came where we are now, where she is realizing that more of a balance needs to take place between seeing her friends and spending time with me. And as a result of that, our relationship is coming back more towards an equilibrium where we're both really happy.
Good.
And so it's gotten better. And it got better. It didn't get better because Bridget, my wife, decided to do something that she wasn't doing before. It got better because I decided to change the stories I was telling about it. And that changed my reality, which included changing my wife without me having to beat my wife over the head to change her. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It feels effortless in the sense that I didn't have to work to change it. What I had to work to do was change my stories. That was work. But most people...
And that can be work.
It can be work.
It can be serious work.
It can be serious work, and it can be long-term work. But it's interesting. It's in my opinion, it's easier work than trying to force somebody to do something you want them to do when they don't want to do it. That can be so much harder. And it's the same is true with your life experience. It's so much harder to try to change your life situation, your life experience through action than it is trying to change your stories internally and then have your life show up differently because you've done that internal work. This is it's magical work. It's like magic. It's the real magic. It's not hocus pocus magic. It's like your world shapes to what's going on inside of you. Yeah, I know. I know. Your world.
It's true.
It is. It's true, right?
It's absolutely true.
Your world reflects back to you the stories that you're telling inside of yourself, and it's designed that way because most of us, we move through the world blind to our stories. So isn't it really helpful? Let's just assume that you believe what I just said, that your physical world reflects your stories back to you. Isn't it helpful to have that as a mechanism to be able to see your physical world reflecting back to you the stories that you're telling yourself, as opposed to having to figure that out by looking within?
Which can be harder.
It can be harder.
You can tell that you're telling messed up stories if you're having a messed up reality in the outside, and that's what we keep trying to say is if you're a trans woman and you keep meeting guys that are, portraying chaser attitudes and are objectifying you and all of these other ideas. And I'm not saying they're right or you're wrong, but I'm saying check your stories and where are you and why is that the reality that keeps coming to you?
So I'm going to tell another personal story that perfectly illustrates what Remy just said because she's spot on. And I'm going to start the story with this. Sometimes the stories you're telling yourself as a transgender person or a trans-attracted person are so painful to hear that you can't find them inside of yourself. So it's easier to find them outside. So in the physical world, I mean. So here's the story. I'm getting really vulnerable today.
You are.
So
I didn't know. He finna do it. I'm here, baby. It's all
Thank
right.
you. I haven't had a regular income in probably 3 years. But I have had like $100,000 have come in through this business or $50,000 through this business or something like that. But for the most part, Bridget, my wife, has been supporting us. And I've been working on, now I present as male. And so I have taken on throughout my life the beliefs that come with that, the privilege, the patriarchy, all of those kind of things, including, even though I don't consciously agree or believe this, including the idea that men should be the breadwinner. So since I haven't had a steady income for 3 years, you can imagine some of the guilt and the shame that I've had to negotiate as I've been working on my projects, including the Transamorous network, all of which are growing and will become successful in the future. And so I've been telling a very particular story that I haven't shared with anybody except for my wife, that is coming to fruition. It's happening, but it's happening it seems to be happening gradually. And part of that experience has been my wife getting really tired of me not having an income. Like, tired to the point of frustration is not even a strong enough word. I can't think of one.
Off.
Yeah, she just wants me to get a job more than anything. But I know that getting a job is contrary to the story that I'm telling about this big thing. And so getting a job would not work. The way forward is through telling the stories and sticking to that. And all the spiritual responses I'm getting confirm that. So one day, this tete-a-tete that my wife and I have about finances came to a head. And I was really frustrated with her, and she was really frustrated with me. And we decided not to spend the day together. We spent a day apart. And I was upstairs in my room thinking about this. I was meditating, and the words came to me that my wife's frustration with my lack of income is a reflection of my own frustration of my lack of income.
Right?
And it rang so true.
Yeah.
It
I
rang
bet
totally
gives,
true.
yeah,
It
buddy.
gives you goosebumps.
Yeah.
Yeah. My internalized stories about having to earn an income were being externalized in my wife's frustration, reflected back to me.
Right. And see, this is where we're getting into what I keep talking about, those deeper layers, right? Those internal patriarchy, that internal man's got to provide, ideas that have been instilled in most of us since childhood are stories.
Yes.
Those are stories. There is nothing wrong with the wife being the provider and the breadwinner. But we have been lived in a society where we are told that this is the way it is, and the man is the provider, and this, that, and the other, right? And so that's a story that Perry had so deep he didn't even realize it was a story.
I didn't even realize it. I didn't even realize. And here's what else.
I find that hilarious.
Here's what else is hilarious. Bridget has had a persistent story that goes like this. Why do I keep finding men who won't support me? It's a perfect match. It's a perfect match. So this is what Remy says this more often than I do. When you go out as a transgender woman and you meet someone who's a skeezer, who's afraid to see you in the daylight, you match that person's story, even though you may not feel like you do. Just like my wife and I were like a perfect match in this way. Mm-hmm. And we're reflecting back each other's stories to each other. And the same thing happens with you guys and your stories. And like Remy said, this financial story for me was too deep. It was too painful to
acknowledge.
Yes, to acknowledge. To acknowledge.
Sometimes it's really hard. It's really hard to. It's so fucking hard to look in the mirror and accept those things which we would consider faults about ourselves, which are almost 100% of the time self-imposed.
Yes. Yes.
We put ourselves in situations and find it hard to look in the mirror and take responsibility for it.
So so here's the.
Ooh, it's so hard to.
Oh my gosh, here's a really hard situation. So here.
Or have it pointed out to us by somebody else.
That's even worse.
That's even worse.
That's even worse.
Ooh, yeah, I have troubles there.
So here you are. You're going out on a date. You meet this guy, and he's acting all kinds of trans chaser at you. In that moment, the most positive thing you can do, the most supportive thing you can do for yourself, is acknowledge that there's something in you that caused that person to show up in your life because they are a match to some story you have about yourself.
I know, girl. It's hard.
It's hard.
I can hear you cussing. I can hear you saying victim blame.
Yes. Blame the victim. Oh.
You're not a victim if you are actively participating in the life that you're living.
Yes.
Period. Whether you acknowledge it or not. And it's really hard to look in the mirror, but it's true. That skeezer, that low-life chaser is in your life at that time because of a story you're telling, either about yourself or about love or about relationships, about men.
Yep.
Check your story, girl. Check your story. Dig deep. What is this? Okay, where does that come from? Okay, that comes from so-and-so said such and such when I was 10. Okay,
yeah.
well, where does that come from, And it's like an ogre. It's got layers. You've got to rip off the layers, you know what I mean? And sometimes it's a really sobering.
It's very sobering.
It's a very
humbling.
That was the word I was looking for.
Yes.
It's a very humbling thing, but it's so empowering. It's so powerful to finally acknowledge that thing that's in yourself and then make a new story.
Yeah.
Change it, alter it, edit it.
And then see the results.
And then stick to it, first of all. Stick to it.
You gotta stick to it.
Stick to that new story.
Yeah.
And I promise you, I swear on the hands of the goddess, it will manifest in your life.
Absolutely.
Maybe the next guy is a little bit better, but okay, he's not the one. But you're still in process, so keep working on your story.
That's
and then
right.
the next one that comes is gonna be a little better. And then the next, right? It's all opportunities to do better.
Yes, that's exactly
and
what
that's
life
really
is.
what it is. It's
life.
all an opportunity to learn a lesson and to do better.
Yes.
That's why we're here.
Now, men, you're in the same boat.
Absolutely.
This isn't
all
just
of
about
you,
the women.
everyone.
Exactly. If you're out there meeting trans women that don't seem like they're your ideal mate, it's because you have a story about that.
You're not an ideal mate.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly right. If
You've got it takes 100 and 100. It's not
Yes.
a 50-50.
Yes.
Shannon used to say that all
Yes.
the time. It's not a 50-50. It's a 100 and a 100.
Yes.
And so you've got to take your own responsibilities and you got to come to the table the ideal partner, period. And then the next person will reflect the ideal partner back to you.
So here, just real quickly, because we're almost out of time. We're at 27 minutes. Some people wonder why I'm with my wife and not with a transgender partner. It's not. First of all, it's none of your business.
None of your damn minutes.
But also, I know what Remy just said. I know right now, based on the trans women I've attracted in my life in the past, that I'm not a good match. And so through the grace of my wife, and this is working in both directions, I'm becoming a better person. And out of this relationship will come a person, me, who will match the person I want as a partner.
And that's an understanding you and your wife have always had.
We've always had it. We've always had it.
So, mind your own fucking business. As far as that goes, we talked about this in the last show.
Yes.
Mind your own business. But it's true. It's true. Whoever you are with right now, if it's not perfect, if it's not your ideal, there's an opportunity to learn and grow.
Yeah.
From whatever's going on in your life right now. It's an opportunity, excuse me, to do better, to be better, to choose a new perspective, to grow, to learn, and create the life of joy that you want. And that person that will match the perfect you when you get there, and none of us are perfect.
No.
I mean, I met my husband and we're both not perfect, but we're both not perfect together, and we make a great team.
All right. And with that, we're going to say goodbye because we've got 1 minute left. Thank you so much for watching today. We've got a great episode coming up after this one. We will see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Ciao.
The Transamorous Network.